The soul often finds itself bound, held captive by invisible chains forged from sin, wounds of the past, and the weight of guilt that refuses to loosen its grip. These chains are not made of iron or steel, but of shame, regret, and the lies whispered in the darkness. Yet, even in this bondage, there is a voice, oft persistent, divine, calling out to the prisoner within, offering hope, freedom, and a new beginning. The chains of sin may seem unbreakable, but mercy is the power that shatters them. Not with force or condemnation, but with love so fierce it cannot be resisted. God's love reaches deeper than the deepest pit, higher than the tallest mountain, wider than the vastest ocean. It is a love that pursues relentlessly, never giving up on the soul it created, no matter how heavy the chains feel. No matter how many times the soul has fallen, mercy stands ready to break every bond, to bring light into the darkest prison, to release the captives into the arms of grace. The journey to freedom begins when the soul acknowledges its bondage, when it lifts its eyes from the pit of despair and looks toward the one who can heal. It is a step of humility, a surrender of pride, a willingness to be transformed. Mercy does not excuse sin, but it covers it with forgiveness, washing away the stains, restoring the soul to its original beauty. Through mercy, the chains begin to crumble, one link at a time, until the soul stands free, clothed not in guilt, but in righteousness. This freedom is not earned by works, but received by faith, a gift from the heart of God to the contrite. The chains broken by mercy reveal the glory of God, for it is in mercy that his character shines brightest. It is the demonstration of his grace, the proof of his boundless love. When the soul walks free, it reflects the glory of the one who set it free. It shines with a light born of redemption, a light that cannot be hidden. This glory is not for the soul's own boasting, but a testimony to the transforming power of divine love. It draws others from their chains, inviting them to experience the same mercy. The chains of sin are strong, but mercy is stronger. It breaks through the darkest prisons, opens locked doors, and brings life where there was death. God's mercy is a river that never runs dry, flowing endlessly to cleanse, restore, and heal. It invites the soul to drink deeply, to be refreshed, to be made whole. As the soul drinks from this river, it begins to walk in newness of life, no longer defined by the past, but by the grace that redeems. This grace empowers the soul to love, to forgive, to serve, and to shine. The chains broken by mercy pave the way to glory, a glory that is eternal, unshakable, and radiant. The soul that has tasted mercy cannot help but praise, to lift its voice in gratitude, to declare the wonders of the one who saved it. The journey from chains to glory is a journey of love, love that pursued, love that redeemed, love that restored. And in this love, the soul finds its true identity, no longer a prisoner but a child of God, an heir of glory. The chains that once bound are now symbols of victory, reminders of the power of mercy, testimonies of God's unending faithfulness. Freedom in God is not merely the absence of bondage, it is the presence of peace, the certainty of being known, the stillness of a heart no longer at war with itself. The soul that walks out of its prison does not do so alone or unnoticed. It is carried, held, restored, not just to escape the chains, but to be healed of what caused them. The freedom that God gives is not temporary, not conditional, not dependent on how strong the soul feels. It is rooted in his nature, anchored in his word, sustained by his spirit. He does not unlock the door and walk away. He leads the soul into wide open spaces, where the air is clean, the sky clear, and the burden of shame no longer weighs heavy. Life begins here, not in perfection, but in surrender, not in flawless choices, but in a heart yielded to the one who loves without limits. This new life breathes differently. It exhales fear and inhales trust. It learns to walk again, not in its own strength, but in the grace that carries every step. The past is not erased, but redeemed. The memories may remain, but they lose their sting. They become stones of remembrance, not shackles of regret. In this life, the soul discovers the beauty of becoming, not what the world expected, but what God always intended. Here, identity is rooted not in failure, but in mercy. Love becomes the soil where new things grow. Where bitterness once took root, now compassion blossoms. Where anger once smoldered, now joy rises quietly, deeply. God's love is not soft in weakness, but fierce in rescue. It finds the soul when it hides, waits when it runs, pursues when it resists, and when that love is received, when it is truly believed, it transforms everything. It rewrites the story, it rebuilds the ruins, it restores the voice. The soul learns again to speak truth, not the truth of shame, but the truth of freedom. I am loved, I am forgiven, I am made new. The world may still whisper, otherwise the shadows may still stretch across the path, but the light within, the light born of mercy, will not be overcome, because love has entered in, and love, once planted by God, cannot be uprooted by anything man can do. This is what it means to be truly free, to walk not in fear of falling, but in assurance that even if you do, you fall into arms that hold, not punish. The soul no longer runs from God, but toward Him, no longer hides in shame, but rests in grace. In this new life, the soul learns to abide, to stay near, to trust that it is not alone, that every morning is met with mercy, every night sealed with peace. The love that transforms is not loud, it is steady, it is gentle, yet unrelenting, that it tears down walls built from years of pain, removes masks worn from fear, and replaces the heart of stone with a heart that beats in rhythm with heaven. In God's love, the soul is no longer a slave to performance. It does not strive to be enough, because it is already beloved. Here, joy returns, not the kind that fades with changing seasons, but joy rooted in something eternal, a joy that comes not from circumstance, but from the certainty of being held. The love that transforms doesn't stop with the individual, it spills over, it touches those around. The once bound soul becomes a witness, a light, a healer in the hands of the healer. This is the legacy of mercy. Not only freedom, but fruit. Not only release, but renewal. Where once there was silence, now there is song. Where once there was fear, now there is boldness. Where once there was isolation, now there is communion. Love restores what sin tried to steal. Mercy rebuilds what shame tried to destroy. Grace reclaims what the enemy declared lost. And God delights in the soul made new, not because it is now flawless, but because it is His, because it returned, because it said yes to love. The glory of this freedom is not that chains no longer exist in the world, but that they no longer have power over the heart. The new life is not a promise of ease, but a reality of presence that God walks with, works through, and dwells in the soul now free. The once bound soul now learns to dance, to lift its hands, to move with joy, to stand with purpose, because it knows who it belongs to, because it knows who broke the chains, because it knows it is not alone. And as it walks this new path, it becomes an echo of heaven, a mirror of grace, a living story of love that heals. This freedom, this new life, is a gift, a miracle, a testimony to the one who calls us out of the grave and into glorious light. Chains broken by mercy do not simply fall to the ground, they become part of the altar, a place where others come and find their own freedom waiting. Freedom is never meant to be hoarded, it is not a treasure to be buried, nor a secret to be guarded. Freedom, when born of mercy, radiates outward. It becomes light, it becomes movement, it becomes testimony. The soul once chained knows the sound of prison. It remembers the silence, the shame, the aching hunger for love, and because it knows, it recognizes that ache in others. This recognition is not mere empathy, it is calling, it is divine appointment. For what God restores, He sends. What He heals, He uses. That soul that has been set free begins to notice others who still walk in silence, others who smile but carry invisible chains, others who, like it once did, have learned to survive but forgotten how to truly live. There is no arrogance in the free soul's eyes, only compassion, only the knowing look that says, I have been there too, and that knowing becomes the doorway through which love enters. The testimony of the healed is not a polished tale, it is raw, holy truth. It does not glorify the pain, but magnifies the mercy. It does not boast in suffering, but reveals the one who never let go. The soul that has walked through the valley does not fear the dark. It carries with it the light that once found it, and now walks intentionally into shadows where others wait. Love, once received, begins to move the soul. It becomes the reason for every step, not the romantic love of fleeting affection, but the divine love that seeks the lost and lifts the lowly. This love is not loud, but it is bold. It is not forceful, but it is unwavering. It speaks truth with gentleness, and offers presence where words fall short. The mission of love begins quietly, a conversation, a prayer, a moment of listening, but its reach is eternal, because love planted by God never returns empty. The soul begins to see others, not as broken, but as waiting, not as burdens, but as sacred stories in progress. It sees beyond behavior into need. It sees past resistance into pain, that it no longer sees itself as a victim of sin, but as a vessel of redemption. What once was used to wound now becomes the very place from which healing flows. This is how mercy multiplies. One freed soul awakens another. One voice raised in truth echoes across unseen walls. One act of love breaks years of fear. The mission does not require a platform, only a willing heart. It is fulfilled in coffee shops, in hospital rooms, in late-night phone calls, in silent prayers whispered over strangers. The soul learns that to love is to remain, not to fix, but to stay, to show up, to carry, to remind the weary that they are not forgotten. Love becomes a lens, reframing every moment. The ordinary becomes holy, the mundane becomes opportunity. Even the pain becomes purpose. And this purpose is not heavy, it is holy. It is not earned, but entrusted. It is not a job, but a joy. The soul begins to walk with new the kind that demands attention, but the kind that carries presence. A peace that unsettles darkness. A grace that makes room that it speaks, and chains begin to loosen. Not because it is powerful, but because truth spoken in love carries divine weight. The free soul learns to fight for others the way it was fought for. It intercedes, it stands in the gap. It weeps with those who weep and rejoices when even one chain falls. Its scars are not hidden, they are shown with humility, as proof that wounds can heal, as proof that mercy is real. This love-driven mission is not seasonal, it is lifelong. It is lived in faithfulness, not fame. It is sustained by the presence of God, not applause. The soul learns to rest, even while carrying others, because it knows it is not their savior, it is only the reflection. It points, it prays, it walks alongside. This is the miracle of the multiplied testimony. One soul rescued becomes the rescuer. One story told becomes a lifeline. One song of redemption becomes the anthem of generations. Love becomes not just what it receives, but what it gives. Love becomes the reason it keeps going, the reason it rises, the reason it refuses to grow numb. For to love in this way is to live in the fullness of the calling. It is to be the hands and feet of mercy. It is to step into the story of others and speak life into their silence. There is nothing more beautiful than a soul that walks in freedom and brings others with it. Nothing more powerful than a heart once cold, now burning with compassion, that it becomes a dwelling place for hope, a resting place for those who have lost their way, a lighthouse in the fog. The chains that once enslaved are now trophies of grace. They hang not as reminders of shame, but as altars of gratitude. And everywhere this soul goes, heaven follows, because where mercy has been, mercy will flow again. This is how love becomes mission. It begins in the heart set free, and it does not end. When love moves through a soul made whole, it does not simply affect one life. It alters the atmosphere. What once was broken is not only healed, but it becomes a source of healing. What once echoed with silence, now resounds with presence. And everywhere the soul steps, light follows. This love is not loud or theatrical, but steady, like the morning sun warming a cold field, like rain falling on thirsty soil. It is felt before it is seen, recognized before it is explained. It has no need to announce itself, because its fruit is transformation. A soul that has been broken and restored knows how to recognize brokenness in others, not to shame, but to serve, not to expose, but to embrace. Its mission is not to fix, but to love deeply and fully, believing that love is the force that rewrites everything. When that love enters a room, the room changes. The soul does not demand attention, yet becomes the quiet center, not because of charisma, but because of what it carries, the fragrance of freedom. Mercy leaves a scent. It clings to the footsteps of those who have walked out of darkness. It hovers in their laughter, lingers in their silence. It turns every place they go into sacred ground. One soul surrendered to God can shift the atmosphere of an entire family, a workplace, a city, a generation. Because love, when it is divine, does not stay still. It expands, it multiplies. When this soul enters conflict, it brings peace. When it enters fear, it brings courage. Where there is division, it sows unity. Where there is despair, it restores hope. Not because of the soul's perfection, but because of the God who walks with it. Because of the love that now lives inside it. Alive, active, undeniable. This soul begins to see life differently. It no longer walks to gain, but to give. It does not love to be loved in return, but because it has been filled with a love that overflows, it carries heaven into the ordinary. It turns conversations into confessions, meals into moments of healing, hugs into sanctuaries of grace. And those who encountered this soul may not know why they feel safe, why they feel seen, why they begin to weep when no one said a word, but it is because love has entered, pure and holy. The soul does not just speak words of encouragement. Its very presence preaches a sermon. Its eyes speak mercy. Its actions declare the gospel louder than any pulpit ever could. Where it walks, captives begin to stir. Those long silenced begin to find their voice. Old chains start to tremble, and not by persuasion but by the weight of peace it carries. The healed soul becomes the healing, not because it seeks power, but because it has become a resting place for glory. And in this walking glory, God walks not ahead as a distant commander, not behind as a silent observer, but beside, joyfully, faithfully. He walks in step with the one who has surrendered. He moves in the words unspoken. He stands in every moment of obedience, even when no one else sees. This divine partnership does not elevate the soul into pride, but humbles it into deeper dependence, because it knows that what it carries is not earned, it is gifted. And what is gifted must be stewarded with reverence. As this soul walks, it leaves footprints, not just in the earth, but in eternity. The conversations it has echo beyond time. The prayers it prays ripple into future generations. The mercy it offers opens doors yet unseen. And when it leaves a place, it does not leave it the same. The air lingers with love. The walls remember kindness. The hearts touched begin to wonder if maybe, just maybe, freedom is possible for them too. This is legacy. Not what is built with hands, but what is poured out from the heart. Not what is written on stone, but what is written in the lives of others. That in this soul is not exhausted by this mission because it walks with the source. Its well does not run dry because it drinks daily from the river that never ends. It knows when to speak, when to listen, when to simply be present, because God whispers the rhythms of mercy into its ears. That it lives slowly, deliberately, intentionally, not rushing to prove worth, but anchored in its worthiness through Him. The soul is now not only free, but fruitful. It does not hoard its healing, but offers it like bread. Here, take and eat. I was once hungry too. It opens its arms wide, because its heart is no longer bound. It embraces the messy, the fearful, the forgotten. It becomes a safe place, a holy place, a place where others encounter God without realizing it. It builds not kingdoms of self, but altars of presence. Places where heaven meets earth, where the hurting come and find rest, and find truth, and find love without condition. This is what it means to walk with God, not to always know where the path will lead, but to trust the one who leads. It is not a loud journey, but a faithful one step after another, one soul after another, one yes after another. And in every yes, the kingdom expands. In every yes, a chain somewhere falls. In every yes, the glory of God is revealed. This soul leaves eternal footprints, not by striving, but by abiding, not by dominating, but by serving, not by shouting, but by loving. And God is not far, He is near. He is delighted. He is present in the silence, in the crowd, in the secret. In the daily. He walks with the soul that was once broken, now whole, now sent, now free. The journey of the soul once burdened, once hidden, once gasping for breath under the weight of silent chains has been long. With each step, mercy has unraveled the cords that held it back. Love has filled the hollow places. Light has touched even the oldest shadows. And now, in the stillness, after much walking, the soul finds itself not just standing, but resting, not striving, not explaining, not proving, simply breathing in the presence of the one who was never far. Here, where time seems to slow and eternity brushes close, there is no need to look back with fear. Everything behind was part of the journey, even the detours, even the wounds, even the nights that felt too long. Because all of it, every crack and collapse, every tear and trembling was caught in the hands of mercy, and none of it was wasted. What once seemed like ruin was the ground where faith grew. What once felt like punishment was the refining place of purpose. What once was the hiding place for shame is now the altar of praise. And still, even in all the freedom, even in all the healing, there is one chain left, one so deeply woven into the soul that it has been mistaken for part of its identity. Not visible, not loud, but quietly choking the roots of joy. It is the chain of self-condemnation. Not everyone sees it, not everyone understands it, but the soul knows. It hides behind smiles, it lingers in dreams. It whispers even after worship. You are forgiven, but not fully. You are loved, but with conditions. You are free, but not quite worthy. It is the last lie, the final weight, the oldest shadow, and mercy is not finished. In this final movement, there is no confrontation, no voice from heaven, no shaking of the earth, only the gentle presence of God, kneeling beside the soul, placing His hand on that invisible chain, and whispering something that shakes everything to the core. You are not the sum of your sins. You are not defined by your scars. You are not barely loved. You are completely mine. And just like that, the final chain breaks. Not with noise, but with a sigh of release. The soul crumples, not in despair, but in holy surrender. Tears flow, not from pain, but from the healing that truth brings, and suddenly, everything looks different. The memories are still there, but they are washed in light. The regrets are still real, but they no longer accuse. The soul sees, with eyes cleared by grace, that even its own weakness was never a barrier to God's love, only the doorway through which that love poured in deeper. This is the unexpected ending, not in thunder, not in spectacle, but in quiet. Absolution. In knowing that every sin is not just covered, but forgiven. Every mistake is not just passed over, but redeemed. Every scar is not just accepted, but made beautiful by the one who bears scars too. And what follows is silence, but not empty. It is full of awe, of relief, of peace. This peace is not circumstantial. It does not rely on success or applause. It is the peace of belonging, of being known, of being held by the same hands that broke the chains. The soul now understands something it could not grasp before, that freedom was never about performance, but presence. That love was never fragile, but fierce. That God was not watching from a distance, but writing every page with mercy. And so the soul breathes differently now, walks lighter, listens more, loves deeper. It is no longer trying to become worthy. It is living from worth already spoken over it, and this is the legacy. Not one of perfection, but of redemption. Not one of great deeds, but of great surrender. The soul begins to live not with fear of failing God, but with the joy of walking with Him. It doesn't need to be the hero. It is content to be the healed, and in this healing it begins to forgive, not just others, but itself. It releases the guilt it carried like a second skin. It lets go of the shame it nursed in secret. It opens its hands and lets the weight fall, not into nothingness, but into mercy. Forgiveness becomes not just a one-time event, but a lifestyle, a rhythm, a breath. Inhale grace, exhale shame. The soul learns to embrace the gift at once. Resisted, rest, not laziness, not apathy, but rest that comes from knowing the battle is over. The chains are gone, all of them, and now the soul is free, not just to walk, but to dance, to love without fear, to speak without trembling, to dream again. Because when mercy finishes its work, what remains is beauty. What remains is joy. What remains is a soul so utterly convinced of its forgiveness that it becomes a safe place for others to begin healing. This is the unexpected glory, not in being seen as holy, but in finally believing it is so. Because of the one who calls it beloved, God smiles. Not because the soul has reached perfection, but because it has returned, because it has trusted, because it has believed that mercy was for them too. The chains broken by mercy become the story whispered to others still afraid to believe. They can break all of them, even that one, even yours, and the soul walks on, no longer limping, but running. Running into joy, running into purpose, running into the arms of the one who was waiting all along.